The Laura Ingraham Show.
We're a long way from Hugo Black and William Rehnquist and Antonin Scalia, I can tell you that. They're citing cable interviews with Stephen Miller to knock down the travel ban. Well, looking back on all of this, I think it once again reminds us of how important it is for the White House to have the top lawyers in the country working for them. Not to criticize the folks who are there, but I think we got to be very, very careful about getting people in positions of power in the White House counsel's office, Justice Department on down, who can think 3 and 4 steps ahead here. It took them how many weeks to come up with this new travel ban? And then at the same time, they're saying it's the same as the other one, except with you give some notice, right? You give some notice and you actually allow the people who are the green card holders to come in. You have a couple weeks notice so people aren't caught in the airport, and you take Iraq out of the list. Well, it was fairly obvious, I think, that another Ninth Circuit federal district judge was going to hear a challenge, and that judge, Theodore Chang, you get the Hawaii judge, you get a Maryland judge. Of course this is all going to happen. These are judicial activists. None of them like Trump. You might as well go all the way to the Supreme Court on this. You might as well have taken this to its logical conclusion and taken the original ban all the way up. That's what I think they should have done. And I know they would say, well, if it went to the Supreme Court too soon, you wouldn't have Gorsuch there. It wouldn't. I don't think the Supreme Court would have even been able to hear it that quickly. When you do the arguments on the merits, I don't want to get into all the legalese here, but you do the arguments on the merits, you take it to an en banc petition, the en banc petition, the Ninth Circuit is denied. You then file another petition for rehearing. Then you go back to the district court. You argue the case of the district court. I mean, I think you could have made it to the Supreme Court by the time Gorsuch was there. And even if not, I do understand they didn't want to have precedent created at the Supreme Court level that would have been very dangerous, very deleterious to executive authority. I get that. But you're just going to continue to get hammered on the district court level. That's just going to happen because the liberal activists, judicial, the legal team on the left, all the folks who believe in open borders, they believe that anyone in another country, frankly, has a constitutional right to be in the United States. That's what they really believe, by the way. They are the fanatics on this. What those people are going to do is they're going to judge shop. It's called judge shopping, district shopping. They're going to go to the most reliably left-wing circuit courts. So they first have to file in the district court. Then they know the Trump administration will appeal. They'll be back in the Ninth Circuit. And we all know where that ends up. It's just that it's not the smartest legal strategy here. And it's why you have to do things really carefully and plot it out, not over the course of like 3 days, but over the course of 6 months. If we do this, then these 5 things are going to happen. If we do this, if we put it off until Gorsuch is on the court, looking back on this, you had a vacancy on the court. Might it not have been smarter for the Trump administration to have waited on the travel ban? That ate up a lot of oxygen in the room. Took a lot of beating for the administration to get through this. And it ate up all that time in the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks of the administration. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying I don't want this in place. I do. I'm thinking strategy here. We'll all strategize together. You can call in and disagree with me on this. But we see where it's gotten us. It's not helpful. Now, you could just send your people out while they're trying to defend Obamacare, while they're trying to defend the budget, while they're trying to do all these other things with the Angela Merkel visit, with the Chinese leader coming. You got a lot you're juggling right now. Okay? So I'd rather have taken the fight on tax reform, on infrastructure, on healthcare, doing it right, than getting mucked up with the travel ban. I think it just takes us off course right now. But again, hindsight is 2020. Why am I mentioning it, though? I'm bringing this up because it's, don't you hate the phrase teachable moment? I despise that phrase, but it really is. It's a learning curve we're seeing. And I don't want to sound patronizing, and I know I probably risk sounding very like I'm talking down to people. I'm not. I really am not, because it's hard stuff. It's not easy. We got a lot of newbies in the White House. And I like a lot of these guys. Don't get me wrong. I like them a lot. They're great people. They're doing their best. I get it. But you need to know what you don't know. When you're 31 years old, you haven't seen these wars play out. And not in the executive branch level. You might be able to write, op-eds. You might be able to work up on the Hill. You might be able to dash off a speech every now and then. And that's great. All that's great. But you're in your 30s or early 40s and you haven't been through these wars on the executive branch level. Maybe you shouldn't proceed quite so quickly and brazenly and confidently in the media. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean you don't have a valid substantive point in how you're pushing these policies. I'm not saying that. How to get from A to B to C. How do you get there? We're not at C. If we want to get to C, we're not there. We're nowhere close to C. In fact, what the left has now is they have a couple of trophies on the wall. Okay, we say, we beat you here, we beat you here. You thought you were going to come in and do this? Oh, really? We have 2 judges and all these academics across the country who say you're acting in an extra constitutional manner. And you guys don't know what you're doing. So, again, you want to get from A to C, you got to go through B, and you got to do it right. 855-40-LAURA. You can call in and comment on that. We got a lot to get to on the Laura Ingraham Show. We have, we have a lot of scuttlebutt. Michael Savage is going to join us coming up third hour. Savage was beaten up in a restaurant in Tiburon in California. I know exactly where he was, by the way. I know that restaurant. He dines with his poodle. He has this little poodle, okay? I always forget the name. Billy, Johnny, what's the name of the poodle? Willie, Billy, Silly, Tilly. Drew doesn't know. Drew's madly looking at a stack of articles that are, he can't find it to save his life over here. It's a Daily Mail piece. So he's sitting with his poodle. Could probably Google it in 5 seconds.
I believe it's Teddy.
Thank you. Teddy, the poodle. And some lefty came up to me, to him, and he's 74 years old, 73, 74 years old. A guy who tries to step in to help Savage, who is a senior citizen, gets a punch in the face. The funniest part of this is at the end, the police finally get there, and both men are staring at each other, and both of them have done citizens' arrests on the other. So they're just they're both just staring at each other. I'm conducting a citizen's arrest. I'm carrying it out. No, I'm doing a citizen's arrest. So this is how unhinged the left is. Okay. They did it to Milo. They smashed the windows up in Berkeley. Yeah. Poor Charles Murray probably would have gotten beaten up if he had a chance to actually give his speech up in Middlebury. They went crazy up there. We have all these instances where, the Trump rally in L.A. a few weeks ago, where that person was smashed in the face. And they always try to make the conservatives out to be the aggressors. Do you notice that? Oh, I'm sure Michael Savage at age 74 was he sicking his toy poodle on the leftist? So we're going to talk to Savage about it. He has a new book out. What does he write these books in 5 seconds? These books come out every time I turn around, Savage has another book out, but he has a book out, Trump's War. So we'll talk to him about that. Sean Spicer is going to join us. Michael Hayden's going to join us, former director of the CIA, retired 4-star. It's going to be a fun little debate with Hayden. I'm up against a 4-star. I'll take those odds. I know Hayden. He has a book called Playing to the Edge. We're going to chat with him about the Trump wiretapping claims and the refugee issue. And we have a lot more to get to. Trump was interviewed by Tucker Carlson last night. You heard some of those. Did you play the soundbite coming in? I was walking in as the music was starting now. But he talked to Tucker Carlson earlier in the day before the ruling came out by the Hawaii judge. A lot of people are making a big deal of the fact that President Obama made Well, to many people, was a surprise trip to Hawaii the day before the ruling came out. Okay, don't start going black helicopter on me. There's nothing. There was no connection between Michelle and Obama and this Obama judge coming. I mean, that's just, there's no way there's any connection there. Oh, and Evan McMuffin is back to his old tricks. LifeZette has a piece about McMuffin. He's launching a new anti-Trump stunt that you're going to want to read about. So go to lifezette.com. The America First budget is out. I'm going to tell you who I like, who I think does a great job, is Mick Mulvaney. I saw him today on MSNBC. I don't know why these people go to MSNBC to sell their budget, but nevertheless, he went on Morning Joe. He was great. I like him. I don't know him. He's come on our show before, hasn't he? But I don't remember him. Oh, he's a Freedom Caucus guy. That's why I like him. They made me an honorary member of Freedom Caucus yesterday, by the way. A lot of the guys were emailing me going, well, okay. Do I get a plaque? Do I get a home version of the Block Trump game? What do I get for that honorary membership? So the black helicopters are out because of the Obama visit to Hawaii. The Hawaii judge comes out and strikes down the travel ban. They put that pause in place. You're not getting anywhere with the travel ban now. And Maryland judge, another liberal, comes out with the same, basically similar ruling as the Hawaii judge. So now you went from having one well-known ruling. There are other cases that were percolating when the first Ninth Circuit ruling came out. So now you have three well-known federal district court judges ruling against the travel ban. How is this good PR for the administration? Again, the legal strategy here is really important. And another phrase that is getting very tedious to hear on television sadly applies here. We're getting out a little too far over our skis. That's what happens when you get a little confident on the slopes, but you don't quite have that balance down yet. And then suddenly you start flying down the hill and, oh my gosh, you can't stop. You can't stop and crash. And if you hit a mogul, you're in big trouble. You think I'm wanting to ski, hearing that? 855-40-LAURA. Trump wiretapping claim seems to fizzle a little bit. Devin Nunes hitting the president, very in the Devin Nunes way of not hitting him, but saying we don't see anything here. And you get the Republicans, they want to kind of move on, except for the finding out who's unmasking whom in the dragnet of Americans getting picked up in this foreign surveillance. But not a great day yesterday for the administration, I think, on a couple of issues. We're going to get into all this, 855-40-LAURA, as Geert Wilders, unfortunately, not able to pull off a win in Denmark, but nevertheless moves the majority parties to the right on the issue of immigration, which is what the UKIP party did initially when it came to the fore as well. So don't believe what you're saying, that the populists don't have any traction in Europe. Oh, really? Then why are these other parties suddenly paying attention to these issues of migration and gang violence related to migration and benefits being given to migrants who can't assimilate to society? Suddenly they're paying attention to these issues. 855-40-LAURA. People swarm him on tarmacs. I've never seen anything like it. I saw it yesterday. A friend of mine sent me a photo of Spicer with these people surrounding him. I mean, it's Sean, you have quite the fan club. Every time you land, I've seen it myself. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Laura. Actually, my wife's from Nashville, so I think it was just family members.
I saw that. It's like, Sean, let's do a selfie. Oh my goodness.
Well, you know what? Look, and let's be honest. I appreciate it. It's very nice, but it's not. I think they're using me as a conduit to the president. I think these are individuals who have fought for and believe in everything that the president's been doing, and just. My position is one that I think just has a degree of visibility, but they're coming up and saying thank you on behalf, to the president for the agenda that he's pursuing. So
okay.
you've got to make sure that you're always grounded. And I think let's not kid ourselves. This is not about me. I think people aren't coming up to say hi to me. They're calling up, and a lot of times, frankly, some of the stories that you hear of just saying, a woman handed me a letter last night in Nashville. I can't thank you enough what the president's doing. And can you ask? I mean. And so I think you've had a very high degree of fame over the years, and you know that a lot of times it's about you, and sometimes it's about the issues that you're talking about and pursuing. And so in my case, I'm well aware of the fact that anytime someone's coming out to me, it's an extension of them wanting to thank the president for his agenda or for his vision or something that he's already taken care of.
And Sean, you and I have talked about this, but you're always brought down to earth when you just have to get the kids in the car to mass on Sunday. I mean, then then you're just you're just back to the routine, and your kids to your kids you're just dad or mom. I mean, that's just that always brings you
right.
back to earth.
Or the wife just saying, "Hey, the dog needs to get walked," and or you have to clean up after the dog. I get grounded very quickly at home. Don't make that mistake about it.
That makes two of us. So let's talk about a couple of issues. We got the Obamacare issue, but the issue yesterday with the wiretap and the House committee coming out, then the president last night with Tucker Carlson essentially teasing us again about evidence that might come out in the next 2 weeks. Could you shed light on what the president was referring to there?
Well, I don't. Only to the extent that I'll say that the president has been very clear from the get-go, from the time he sent that tweet, that there's information out there regarding activity surveillance activity that occurred during the 2016 election, and we've already seen some of this. The point that I would give to your listeners is one of the issues that gets forgotten in the whole discussion about NSA Director Michael Flynn, who left the president asked to move on, is the only reason that Michael Flynn's name was ever put in the public domain is because he was part of some degree of surveillance. It is illegal for an American citizen to be surveilled in that way and for their name to be revealed. And so the question is, and that's just one example, and I'm just making the point that there's a lot of stuff that's out there regarding the 2016 election and the surveillance that occurred. The president has been very clear that over time, in the next few weeks, I think more evidence and information will be presented to show exactly what he meant. But one of the things that we want to be clear is that the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees have an obligation and have talked about their desire to get to the bottom of this, and they're beginning that process. The Department of Justice asked for an additional week to get the information together that they were requested by the department to get. And so I don't want to get ahead of the investigation and the review that's going on.
But is the evidence, but what I'm saying, Sean, is the evidence going to go directly to the quite, it's quite incendiary claim that President Obama himself ordered a wiretap when, Nunez was kind of throwing that off yesterday. So there's no evidence of that at all.
Well, and I think we have to be clear that the president, is referring to President Obama's administration, and wiretap was in quotes, as you pointed out in the lead up to this. The president's been very clear that, wiretap to most Americans doesn't mean actually as it did back in the 70s and 80s when you would unscrew the bottom or the top of a rotary phone and insert a device that would then monitor. That's sort of the days gone by when technologically that's how it occurs. But I think the president was speaking very broadly. That's why it was in quotes about the degree of surveillance that occurred during this time.
Did you guys, or did he, as far as you know, make an effort to find out how many individuals inside the government would have access to the unmasked names? Putting a foreign phone number in a database, coming up with various phone numbers in the United States, however it's done, there is a finite number of people who have access to that. Have you asked someone at the Justice Department or the FBI to provide those names or provide that information, which would shed light to the unmasking of Americans' names question?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one that I think we want the process to play out on.
But you guys could ask for it. That's my point. You guys could ask for that.
I think we could, and I think part of the issue right now, Laura, is that, as you know from your background, that if we get into a series of what we're asking the Justice Department to do or to not do, the first thing the media is going to do is jump all over us and say that we're impeding it or attempting to influence an investigation. So we're very careful about this, which is why the president was clear that he wanted the House and the Senate to look into this situation and not to sort of be accused of manipulating data from the Department of Justice that he could have potentially said, make this happen. I think, as I've noted from the podium a couple times, the press wants it both ways. They want to be able to say, why don't you just go ask the Department of Justice? And then if we ever talk to the Department of Justice, it's, that was inappropriate on another matter because you were attempting to influence something. So it's amazing that we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't.
The budget question. Of course, Mick Mulvaney was on television this morning pushing the president's priority in the budget. I thought he did a terrific job, by the way. But the invariable criticism, which we heard, was that this is dead on arrival. It was one of the MSNBC, I think it was Katie Tur, who asked the question of Mick Mulvaney. Said, look, is it going to get through the Senate? Mitch McConnell has said he's not going to be in favor of this. So you get hit by the right, and then you also get hit by on the left of individuals who are saying you're cutting Big Bird and EPA. So where do you go with this?
Well, I think we're going to take the message to the American people, and that's where I think you'll see members of both sides of the aisle respond. The fact of the matter is that, look, we're running up on $20 trillion of debt. This president committed to a budget that does two things. One is prioritize defense to make sure that the country's kept safe, and number two is not add a penny to the deficit, which is consistent with the budget that he is submitting today. And I think for most Americans out there who are struggling, who haven't seen a wage increase, who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay for their health care or save for their children's college, that's consistent with them. This isn't about supporting something or not supporting. That's a fake choice. I mean, it's literally like telling a working family out there who's making $40,000 or $50,000 a year that somehow you've chosen not to go to some fancy steakhouse. It's not a question of a choice. It's a question of a priority. And so it's not that they can't go or that they don't want to go. It's a question of they look at their budget and their family's priorities and say, our number one priority is to make sure that there's food on the table, that we clothe our kids and ourselves, that we pay the bills to keep our house and our mortgage going. And then we'll figure out what we can save for maybe a vacation or a holiday or presents for the family. But you don't start doing the add-ons until you take care of the essentials. And I think this president has prioritized the essentials.
So is this a starting point for the negotiation? For someone like a McConnell, he's already made his views known on some of this.
That's right, and I think that by law and by Constitution, the Constitution lays it out very clearly how spending works, and it is the job of the Congress to appropriate money. But I think the goal of the president and the executive through his budget is to lay out the priorities and what he believes the government needs to operate. Now, ultimately, we will continue to work with them, but I think it's a signal, it is a blueprint, and it is a roadmap of where the president wants to take this country and his priorities. And so now it's up to Congress to either agree with the president in terms of the priorities of protecting the nation, or to frankly say to the American people, we have different priorities and here they are, but we need to make sure that we're establishing clearly what the president wants to do and how he wants to do it.
And Mick Mulvaney made the point today that this is only about discretionary spending. This does not deal with entitlements, which would have to be dealt with later on. Now, the issue of Obamacare, Ryan Care, whatever we're calling it now, this is clearly a pivot point for the administration. We had Ryan on the show. We had Vice President Pence on the show a few days ago. Did I keep saying Trump? I don't know why. Vice President Pence a few days ago on the show. Let's listen to what Rand Paul said this morning.
Nobody was running on, we'll give you half as many subsidies, half as many taxes, and instead of paying the individual mandate to the government, you have to pay it to the insurance company. None of us ran on that. No conservative is for his plan. And so I think his plan's dead on arrival. My hope is it never leaves the House. And my hope is that we separate repeal from replace because, there's some great ideas that could have bipartisan support.
Your reaction to what Rand Paul said, is that this was not, in fact, what either the president campaigned on or most Republicans understood was going to happen.
Well, this is a plan that we've worked on with the House and the Senate. I think we have to, especially from a conservative standpoint, look at several things. Number one, this is the vehicle that's going to repeal Obamacare. There's a way that we have to do it through this arcane process called reconciliation, which is how they set it up in the first place. And the problem that exists is that because of Senate rules, and that's how they jammed it down everyone's throat in the first place, there are only certain things you can do through this legislative rules process in terms of undoing it. We are taking full advantage of that to get rid of Obamacare. Then the question comes to priorities. Number one, this is the first time that we've reined in an entitlement program in Medicare, so we've got a per capita cap. Should be unbelievably good news for every conservative out there that's worried about entitlement spending growth. Number two is that if you are a self-employed person, if you run a small business who has to go out on the individual market and get your health care, you know that you don't get the same tax treatment that everyone else who gets their insurance through either a government program, Medicaid, Medicare, or TRICARE, or the 175 million people who get it through an employer system. So right now, if you if you go to work every day and you get health care through your job, then you nor your employer gets taxed on your health care. But if you own a small business or you're self-employed, either as a bookkeeper or you sell stuff on eBay or whatever you do to support yourself, you have to pay you have to use after-tax dollars to buy your health care. So ironically, the engine of job growth, the entrepreneurial spirit that we all champion as Americans, is actually tax disadvantaged under the current system. This system actually starts to level the playing field and recognize and support small businesses and entrepreneurship, which I think is something that conservatives should frankly champion.
So why does the Heritage Foundation, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, Rand Paul, Tom Cotton, a lot of folks in the conservative medical world, why are they against this? I mean, if this is like the best thing since sliced bread, it's not full repeal though, Sean. It's not. If 30% penalty that goes back to the insurance companies, the subsidies are replaced by the tax credit. You still leave all these mandates in with the under 26 and pre-existing conditions, which Rand Paul said will not drive down the price of insurance or overall health care because those mandates are still in place. The only thing that drives down the cost is true competition, which comes in what Tom Cotton says is the mythical phase 3, which if you have the 60 votes in phase 3, then why don't you just do it right now with a full replacement and separate it from repeal? Sean. What happened to Sean? Okay, somehow we lost him. God, I was asking such a good question, too. All right, we'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, try to find out what happened to Sean, and be right back. The president and his team have said repeatedly that we're going to make government more efficient when it comes to the discretionary budget. That means all the executive departments, the EPA getting a drastic cut, which is sending the left into an absolute frenzy. Oh, my gosh, they are. You should read the lefty websites. They're basically predicting environmental Armageddon because of the EPA cut. Oh, no, they are. They're going crazy. Homeland Security gets a 2.8% increase. The Justice Department is being cut by 4%. Education initiatives through the Education Department being cut by 9.2%. It's a change from 2017. So overall, it's down 14%, which is fantastic in my view because the federal education dollars are a big waste. Housing and urban development goes down 12% overall. It's a 4% change from year to year. Treasury is about the same. It goes down 4%. Interior gets a 12% cut, down 1.5% change from 2017. So 2017 to 2018, because this is the 2018 budget. But when you think about the sheer size of this federal government, and I've seen it firsthand. I mean, going back so many years when I worked in the federal government, transportation department, education department, even in the White House, in the old executive office building, there are just a lot of people you don't need there. Now, it doesn't add up to a lot of money, believe it or not. The real money is in the Medicare and the Social Security. That's where the big numbers are, and they always will be. But the federal agencies that exist that don't need to exist at all, and the workforce that accompanies them, and then the lobbyists that run in to keep the budget humming every year. Well, that just happens year after year. And so Mick Mulvaney comes in. Remember, he's a former Freedom Caucus member. I'm delighted that he is the OMB director. He was phenomenal on television. He has a very nice approach. I like his demeanor. I like his delivery. He's very confident, but he's not defensive. I'm extremely impressed with him, what I saw today. So anyway, they were trying to pin him down on Morning Joe. Let's listen.
Can you talk about where you're concerned that perhaps some of these cuts may hurt Americans' lives?
No. I think that we're actually doing exactly what we said to do to protect Americans. So we're spending more money, for example, on the border. We're spending more money on law enforcement generally. We cut a bunch of grant programs. We have grant programs in the Department of Justice. So no, I think we're doing a better job of protecting Americans and making the reductions in programs that either don't work, programs that are duplicative, programs that haven't been authorized by Congress. We still have a lot of those, and programs that just can't prove that they're getting any bang for their buck.
Casey Hunt then chimes in.
My question here, this seems to be dead on arrival in Congress. You already have Republican members saying, look, especially on the State Department, Mitch McConnell has said, no way. Does any of this have any chance?
Sure. We're sending a message to Congress, and the message is very, very clear. We want more money to defend the nation, more money to defend the border, more money to enforce the laws, and we want to do it without adding to the deficit this year. We're not balancing the budget here. All we did is take $1 away from over here and reprioritize it over there.
They're really worried about that State Department money. The State Department's been so effective in branding and selling and increasing America's influence around the world. I mean, when I think of all those ambassadorial parties they have overseas and the foreign aid we've given, it's all added up to a lot of more stability, and we've been able to stem some of the real problems of the migrant crisis. Oh, wait, we haven't been able to do any of that. But I love the Republicans on Capitol Hill who are all worried about the State Department budget. And I know this is what Mattis said. Mattis said years ago, if you don't fund the diplomacy, we're going to have to buy more bullets. Now, maybe you just don't get involved in every war that's out there. This is where I'm with Rand Paul. Oh, by the way, John McCain said Rand Paul is effectively working for the Russians now. That's what John McCain said yesterday. But you know why? Because Rand Paul doesn't think if Lithuania is invaded, the United States shouldn't be sending tens of thousands of troops. So now he's working for the Russians. John McCain is it's shameless, honestly. Let's take a poll on how many Americans think we should send troops to Latvia into Ukraine. I just don't think there's any public support for that. But McCain would have us involved in conflict after conflict after conflict if he had his way. I mean, is there a conflict he doesn't want us to be militarily involved in at this point? 855-40-LAURA. And then, well, a lot of these programs that people keep saying, well, what about they always go to the kid. What about the kids in the summer? They're not going to be able to go to the boys' clubs or the girls' clubs. There are so many programs that are funded by private individuals, by private charities that do a better job than these government programs ever will. And we have all these big high-tech billionaires who are sending a lot of dollars overseas. They're doing the global initiatives. They're doing the Bill Gates, the international funding of all these projects. Think of the money that these guys could funnel into. And I know they do some of this, but maybe they should step in where government can't. And you'd probably have more efficient programs when you did that. Right. And I know there's problems in other parts of the world, and I support doing things for people who are in need. I really do. But I think we can all put our heads together and figure out a way to help kids have a place to, go to in the summer so they're not on the streets without having the government set up more agencies to administer these things. But so Mulvaney's getting pushed on, the programs, you're cutting the programs.
There's in this budget a $3.7 billion cut in grants for teacher training, after-school summer programs, and aid to low-income students. Mm-hmm. What do you say to a family right now who is a low-income family and depends on this kind of money? What do you say to a teacher who's busting his or her butt every day and relies on this money? What happens to them?
A lot of those programs that we target at, they sound great, don't they? They always do. They don't work. A lot of them simply don't work. I can't justify them to the folks who are paying the taxes. I can't go to the auto worker in Ohio and say, please give me some of your money so that I can do this program over here someplace else that really isn't helping anybody.
I love Mick Mulvaney because it's not fair to ask this guy over here who's barely making it to send money over to this program that we don't have any real evidence is working. That's why. Because it's someone's money. It's not money that falls from the sky. It's money that we either have to borrow from China or from Japan, or from Canada, or from all the other debt holders that exist on the face of the planet. We either go into debt further, which makes us weak, which makes successive generations' future more imperiled, or, we have to cut from somewhere. So where else do you want to cut? You want to cut more from the military? I guess we could do that. But there is a priority here. If you're going to spend more than you take in, then you have to print the money, you have to borrow the money, And printing and the quantitative easing is only going to get us so far. The interest rates went up another 1/4 point. Now, it's not the end of the world. Things are going to get a little bit more expensive for some people, but, the elderly like the rates going up on their CDs and stuff. But, it does have an effect. But anytime I hear them saying, the programs are being cut. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you get into debt. You have to start cutting. We're not flush with cash. Just like if Willie Geist were in debt at home, he'd have to probably figure out a way to cut. That's what families are supposed to do. That's what the government is supposed to do. 855-40-LAURA, and we'll play one more.
These specific programs aren't helping anybody?
We think that these programs that we've targeted are programs, as I've mentioned, simply haven't worked, can't justify their existence, are duplicative with other programs. And many of the examples you just gave, there are other programs that can do the exact same thing. I think we have, and I lose track of the numbers, there's so many, more than 50 job training programs within the federal government. Clearly, there's got to be some opportunity there for combination savings.
Yeah, reminds me, we have to give the money to Planned Parenthood because otherwise women aren't going to get exams, breast exams. Like, women aren't going to get screenings, even though they don't do half the screenings they claim they do. Well, of course, there's all sorts of community centers that could be where they don't do abortions. 855-40-LAURA. Sharon in Missouri. Sharon, John McCain going after Rand Paul. Was that a soundbite or was that a tweet? Oh, is this out? We got to get that. We got to play that. All right. Well, wait. Hey, Sharon, hold on. We're gonna hold you over because I do want to. To whom are you closer in your foreign policy outlook? Are you closer to John McCain, running with the military McCain, or more pragmatic Rand Paul? I know it's a leading question, but Rand Paul's like, take care of business at home, use our military, and put boots on the ground when it's in our strategic interest to do so. And if it's in our strategic interest and it will help Americans' national security, live up to our agreements for sure, then we should do it. But otherwise, we are just going down a rat hole once again. 855-40-LAURA. Don't go away. That is just a low blow. I mean, that's what McCain thinks about Trump, really. I mean, that's what McCain basically thinks that about Trump. He's not saying it out loud today, but he thinks the same thing. If you're not for going to war in the Ukraine or Lithuania or Latvia or Estonia, then you're working for the Russians. That's what he thinks. That's crazy. 855-40-LAURA. Rand Paul was on Morning Joe responding to this.
What's your reaction to Senator McCain's characterization of your objection?
Well, I think he makes a really, really strong case, for term limits. I think maybe he's past his prime. I think maybe he's gotten a little bit unhinged. I do think that when we talk about NATO, there can be a rational discussion about the pros and cons of expanding it.
Yeah, he's against expanding NATO because he thinks the United States is going to get drawn into these conflicts where we don't really have a national security interest. Sharon in Missouri, go ahead, my friend.
John McCain is starting to sound like Jan Brady on the old Brady Bunch. Instead of Marsha, it's Russia.
That's funny. Well, he's obsessed. He's just obsessed. And he's never worried about China. I don't hear him ever concerned about China. Every time they say Russia, I say China. Russia, China. I mean, we're extending the olive branch, perpetually extending it to China. Let's go to BJ in Arizona. Go ahead, my friend.
I don't know how John McCain keeps getting reelected. He doesn't make any sense.
Ka-ching. He raises a lot of money. I can tell you that. Defense contractors love him. Big Pharma loves him.
He's open borders. And so is Jeff Flake.
You're in Arizona. You got two Flakes as senators. You got McCain and Flake. I mean, but can you imagine taking a poll of the Americans who believe that we should be in favor of NATO expansion in order to set us up so we're going to be going in to fight a war in Eastern Europe? How many? I mean, I forget like 10% for that. Doesn't stop McCain though.
if we put active troops and got involved in combat where McCain wants us to be, they put a little angry McCain on the globe, on the map, and it's virtually everywhere. So his foreign policy is something that would greatly endanger the United States, greatly overextend us, and there has to be the thought whether or not it's in our national interest to pledge to get involved with war if Montenegro has an altercation with anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're doing Montenegro. So we got Macedonia, we got the Ukraine, we got Latvia, Estonia. What about Belarus? What are we going to do there? I mean, what is our national security interest there? This is where we're going to have to settle things with Merkel. Merkel's coming. Is it tomorrow? Oh, she'll be here on St. Paddy's Day. Do you guys do anything on St. Patrick's Day? I'm going to talk about that. I did. Chris and I went to. We went to an Irish bar. I never do that. We went to an Irish bar on Capitol Hill last year. It was kind of fun for a few minutes, but then I had to get out of there. It was crowded. It was one of those days where he got a flat tire. Then it was like, remember that? That was brutal. But we had the green beer, and it did taste good. But it's a madhouse. It is and it starts to be a madhouse today. Like at 5 o'clock today, or excuse me, 2 o'clock today. There'll be people lined up at the Irish bars in D.C.
Call that pre-gaming.
And they'll be there. Yeah, they'll be there all day. They'll be there from like 2 o'clock today all the way through 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday. And all the Catholics are excited because various archdioceses have allowed them to give dispensation for the meatless Friday. So you can eat your corned beef tomorrow. I can't stand corned beef. Cannot stand it. It's never been something I've liked, but I know it's a tradition, so you got to have your corned beef. But do you all do anything?
I mean, not me.
Well, you're Italian. What are you going to do?
That's right. I wait for St. Joseph's.
That's a big one. Yeah, the San Gennaro Festival. I used to go to that in New York. That's fun, too. St. Joseph's Day is great. Come on. It doesn't get any better than that. But the St. Paddy's Day, I'm a quarter Irish, and so I usually wear a sprig of something green. But green is not a color that I normally wear. It's not a great color on me. I'm a blue person. But St. Paddy's Day, you're going to march in the St. Paddy's Day parade? Are you going to do that? Well, now it's the transgender contingent at the St. Paddy's Day parade. They have not been represented well in the New York parade, so they definitely have to have their own float. Seriously, you've got to include everyone: the transgender people, the gay Americans. The list goes on and on. We just have to keep it going. Drew sent me a very disturbing piece yesterday, which maybe I'll get into. I've now teased it. We'll take a break. Don't go away. A lot more to get to. Hayden up next.
Well, I don't. Only to the extent that I'll say that the president has been very clear from the get-go, from the time he sent that tweet, that there's information out there regarding activity surveillance activity that occurred during the 2016 election, and we've already seen some of this.
Joining us now, I'm delighted he is with us, former CIA Director Michael Hayden. General Hayden, how are you? It's great to talk to you. Your paperback's out, Playing to the Edge. You're certainly playing to the edge by coming on my show, General.
Happy to be here.
Well, I always like to have fun. Come on. I know. First of all, we got to get into this 2 weeks, the big teaserama again. We got 2 weeks for the big reveal. But before we get to that, you've gone after the, quote, pro-Trump media for peddling illegitimate and non-fact-based worldviews. I mean, does that include yours truly and LifeZette and all of our?
I didn't actually. The folks who referred to that expanded what I had said. They made their own little universe of who the pro-Trump media was. I think I specifically mentioned our friend Sean and Breitbart. And beyond that, they were just filling in their own spaces. I
see, because we sell a lot of books here on the Laura Ingraham Show. That's what I would like to say.
That's why I'm here.
Okay, all right. Well, and Matt Drudge. I mean, here's what I think. In the former Bush administration, folks that and so many of them are friends of mine, and patriotic, great people.
Yeah.
But yeah. I say to them, look, these media outlets exist because Americans are fed up with the traditional media, which traffic in lots of fake stories, lots of editorializing that's masked as reporting. I mean, New York Times today describes Trump's remarks as xenophobic, racist. That's in a news story. It's not quoting anybody. So I think people are so tired of the trafficking in these half-truths and biased reporting, all the wrong predictions in the election last year. And so they look for other alternatives, and they kind of take it all in. So I don't know if it's pro-Trump, anti-Trump, middle of the road, but, it's a voice.
No, I get it. But, in my heart, Laura, I coming from an intel guy, we're, for better or for worse, and sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail, but we try to be accurate, dispassionate, fact-based. So my instincts are that the remedy for biased reporting is not more biased reporting, all right? The remedy is truly fact-based reporting. And I have to honestly say that I was talking about the Breitbart piece that seems to have triggered the Twitter storm that launched us on this wiretapping escapade. And when I read it, it, to my mind, wasn't fact-based. And even though it had sourcing in it, when you went to the sources to which it referred, they were a far distance from what it was alleged they had said.
And
so
that
was just my point.
Okay, and yet that takes us back to the original issue with the president's tweet. I asked Sean Spicer about this today. Right. He said last night with Tucker Carlson, General Hayden, that the word wiretap could be, could be broadly construed. Given your experience as head of the CIA, what do you think about that?
Now, wiretap's not a metaphor. Wiretap in common English usage is intentionally monitoring the communications of a specific individual. And so I do think that was less the president doubling down than moving his chips to another game and to another table. And I'm really curious, like you are, as to what big reveal we're going to have in the next 14 days. And I thought it striking that Sean had trouble kind of suggesting what that might be either. So we'll just have to see if the president's got more information. But Laura, can I take it to where I think the story's going? Because I think it's important that we all understand this.
Mm-hmm.
So President Obama didn't do this. It's not because, I got admiration or don't have admiration for his character. I'm just telling you the plumbing doesn't work that way. It could not have happened with the president ordering it. It's got to be a court, a judge, probable cause, and so on. And oh, by the way, the two guys who would have done that, Comey and Clapper, said they didn't. Where we're heading, I think, Laura, and what the president might finally land on is not wiretapping against him or his campaign at all. But there is a possibility that in the normal, and I underscore normal, collection of foreign intelligence, say we're going after a Russian oligarch whom we know is money laundering, if that oligarch would have had a conversation with an American, even an American on Fifth Avenue associated with the Trump campaign, we still get to cover that conversation, even though an American might be one end of it. We're simply required to protect the American's privacy by what we call minimizing his identity. In other words, we would say Russian oligarch, whatever, in a conversation with a named U.S. person said this and that. And we would never put the U.S. name in there unless, and again, this is normal, Laura, not exceptional. It's not Obama, it's not Bush, it's Truman, okay? This is how we've done it since we started the agency in 1952. If that U.S. person's name is critical to understanding the intelligence, then we do unmask it and put it in. And very revealingly, yesterday, Laura, the chair and ranking of the House Intel Committee sent a letter to the appropriate authorities saying, did we have any incidental collection? That's what I just described for you. And were you requested to unmask any U.S. identities? And so, in my heart of hearts, Laura, if there's any there, it's what I just told you.
Well, I asked Sean Spicer this, and tell me if this makes sense. I said, well, doesn't the president have the ability to request the names of those in the intel community who would have had access to the unmasked identities of Americans swept up in such a foreign intelligence surveillance or the routine surveillance of foreign agents. So, and he said, well, that would be, we have to be careful because that would look like we were interfering with an ongoing investigation. What about that?
Yeah, but he, well, let's run the clock back. Okay, what I wish would have happened on that Saturday morning 10 or 12 days ago is the president rolling out of bed and being angered by something he may or may not have read in Breitbart News, rather than tweeting, would have just hit the button on the phone and said, get Comey and the acting director of national intelligence down here for lunch. I got some questions. Mm-hmm. And he could have resolved it right then and there. But he didn't. So he kind of launched the start.
And how many people do you think,
with regard to this investigation?
General Hayden, how many people do you think would have access to those American names, those identities, in the normal course of a surveillance of a foreign individual, foreign person of interest?
So in the normal course of events, the actual operators who are conducting the surveillance, and then they would go to their supervisors, and if it were a close call, Laura, they would have asked one of the operational lawyers at NSA as to whether or not it would be legitimate to put the name in as essential to understanding the intelligence. What normally happens, Laura, and this is going to take a minute, because I think it's going to be very revealing. What normally happens is, by habit, NSA doesn't put it in, and then it goes out, and then a customer, the FBI, the White House, somebody at state says, hey guys, I need to know the masked identity. Otherwise, I can't understand. And then it comes back to NSA, and then through a process that actually, Laura, doesn't even get up to the director. It's handled, by the professionals. They make a call. Now, let me take you back to 2004. And you may not recall this, but John Bolton was the nominee to be our our ambassador to the UN. And a lot of Democrats were making noises because John had requested the unmasking of some identities. And I had to go to the intel committees and explain to them, A, the process, and B, that Secretary Bolton was actually asking logical questions, that this wasn't nefarious or evil. I guess what I'm trying to point out to you, Laura, this is actually fairly routine for us. It's only new to a lot of other people.
It's not routine to leak the information, though, correct? That's not routine.
Now, it's routine to respond to the request from a government official to unmask. Now, pushing that data out into the public domain, that's different.
But how many people do you think in general? I mean, is it 100 people who would have access to this? 10 people? 12 people? I mean, that's getting back to, they could find out who leaked this if they wanted to.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I'm making this up a bit, Laura, mid-range two figures.
So under 100.
Yeah. And the audit trail, believe me, the audit trail is documented. You know
that's what I'm saying. You can find this out.
Requested it. Yeah. And
Trump can find this out.
Devin Nunes and Adam Schiff asked. Well, that's what Nunes and Schiff asked for yesterday.
Well, I think
which is spot on.
You're making a good point. I mean, I think that Saturday would have been a good time to say, let's find out how this got out there, and let's work on this together. John Conradi from LifeSet is also with us. General Hayden, John.
Yeah, General Hayden. To switch things up a little bit, yesterday on Fox News, Chuck Schumer said that the only reason Saudi Arabia isn't on the existing travel ban is because Trump has hotels there. Don't you sort of think that, would you consider Saudi Arabia a country that belongs on the list of the other six? Would you consider it a country that would have trouble vetting its citizens?
No, of course not. And the criteria for the six, and John.
Well, and wouldn't the Senate minority leader know that?
Yeah, wouldn't Schumer know this, General?
Oh yeah. So to the point, I think you all know, as a policy matter, I think this is a bad idea. As a legal matter, I think the president's got a lot of headroom here to use his authority. And then as a judgmental matter, the six countries are on the list because they don't have governments. Okay, and Saudi Arabia does indeed have a government. And I got to tell you, my life experience in cooperation with the Saudi security services is an unmitigated success story. These guys were serious, good, and cooperative.
And you said, so these countries that don't have the ability to vet because they don't have governments, yet you think the policy isn't a good policy, not following.
Yeah, two or three reasons behind that, Laura. And again, I think the administration really did a lot of good heavy lifting between round one and round two. The second executive order is far more precise and frankly defensible. But at a policy level, I think we've overhyped the threat from these countries. I do. I think we have underestimated the truly extreme vetting that already takes place with regard to these coming in. I'll give you an example. We brought in about 10,000 Syrians last year. 85% were women and children. The average vetting time was 18 to 24 months. We know who these people are. So I don't think this was necessary. It imposes a burden on the world's least fortunate people. And here's the part that really concerns me. It seems to live the jihadist narrative that we hate all of them. And so, on balance, I don't think it's good policy. But you've heard my views that, no, those 6 countries are on the list because they're the right 6.
In general, before we let you go, McMaster, General McMaster in at NSA, Dina Powell, who's a former Bush administration person, doesn't really have a lot of background in national security, but she's now the deputy national security advisor, worked at Goldman Sachs. What about that?
I know Dina. I have the highest regard for Dina. And you know, Laura, I've been handicapping the choices here, saying yes or no with my personal views. So very candidly, when I saw Dina's name there, that was in the win column as far as I'm concerned. She's a very smart woman. She's got a unique personal background in the Middle East. She speaks Arabic.
Yeah, well, that's
She's got governmental experience. She knows how things work. And so I think that'll help HR get things done.
She has the interagency process down, which is in and of itself is a labyrinth. Yes. So General Hayden's book, it's out in paperback.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, you take care. We'll